Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to turn a Raspberry Pi B+ edition with RetroPie installed into a portable gaming device. This process is very simple and shouldn't take too long if you've had any experience working with electronics. The tools you're going to need are a soldering iron, wire strippers and cutters, and a 3D printer for the case. The parts that I used are a Raspberry Pi B+ edition, a 3.7 volt lithium-ion battery, a PowerBoost 500C, which allows us to charge the battery using a phone charger and boost its output to 5 volts, a 5-inch HDMI screen, all of which can be purchased from Adafruit, a Buffalo Classic Super Nintendo controller, and a small HDMI cable from Amazon, and finally a switch and some wire from my local hardware store. I will include links to all of the parts that I bought online in the description. Just a heads up, I am not going to be covering how to install and set up RetroPie on your Raspberry Pi. If you need to do that, plenty of others have made videos on the subject. So, once you have all your parts, you're going to want to test the screen and make sure it's configured with the Pi. I've included a link to the tutorial I used to set it up in the description. Okay, now that you've configured the screen, it's time to begin soldering. So, just before we get started, some general tips to remember while you're soldering. Always do it on a clean, well-ventilated area. I'm doing it in my garage, and I have the back door open. You can't see it from here, but solder isn't generally made with lead anymore, but you still don't want to breathe in the fumes, especially if you're sensitive to stuff like that. If you have lung problems or breathing issues, you definitely don't want to be breathing that in. It also just doesn't smell very good. You make sure you're in a clean workstation, and you have to be mindful of where you're putting the soldering iron. It gets hot, it could damage something, it could hurt you, it could start a fire. Just be safe. Always keep an eye on what you're doing, but you should be fine. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to strip our wires. The kind of wire I'm using is thermostat wire. That's just what they had lying around at the electronics store that I went to, the electrician's store. It's a little thick, more thick than I would like, but it'll work. You can get hobbyist wire online and at some hobby shops. But since I went to an electrician's store, they didn't have too much in the way of hobbyist wire. So anyways, stripping wire is very simple. You're just going to need some wire strippers and your wire. You have to you're going to want to get about this much, maybe a little bit more, but this should be plenty. You can always trim extra wire later or strip more later, so don't worry too much about it. And you just kind of need to find a little notch that it fits in, and then you close tightly and you pull. And this one has kind of thick sheeting on it, so it'll be a little bit more difficult to get off, but with hobby wire the protecting is pretty thin, so you won't have as much trouble as I'm having right now. But as you can see, I've got it off. It's a little rough, so I'm going to do a little bit more fine-tuning to it. So just, keep going out with your strippers. So here we go. As you can see, I got a pretty decent size amount of off. This will be plenty long for our needs, and we're probably going to end up clipping it off, some of the extra off when we're done anyway. So I like to kind of wrap them nice and tightly together so it doesn't come apart. So the first thing we're going to do is solder all of the wires to our PowerBoost 500C. So there should be 4 wires in total coming out of this. 2 of them are going to go to our Raspberry Pi, which is going to be what powers it, and the other 2 are going to be going to our switch. So anyways, what you're going to need to do is just put a little bit of solder, not much. You're only going to need a tad, and here, like that. Should be able to see there's a bit of a connection. Now you need need to make sure in all of your solder points that you don't spill over onto other. See the gold circles? You cannot spill onto those, otherwise you're going to create a short, which is going to make it so that your board won't work, possibly overheat and break. So it's just vitally important that nothing crosses over. So I've got some solder on the back here, and you can put some solder on the front, which I think I'm going to do since it doesn't look that great. And then you can move on to the other things. And that's it. So now you have to do it for the other connections. So we're going to need to solder one to the 5 volt, which we just did, one to the ground, and those two are going to go to your Pi, which we'll do after we get everything soldered. And then you're going to need one wire that goes to the EN, and then another wire that goes to ground, and those two are going to go to your switch. And depending on the size of your case and what shape you went, the length of wire is going to depend on that. So once you've gone ahead and soldered all of those, we can move on to the next step, and I'll come back when I've finished that. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and solder our wires to the GPIO, which is this thing right here. And we're only going to need 2 pins, and one is the ground and the 5 volt. The 5 volt is this top left pin right here, or bottom left for you. And then the ground is 2 over from that, so this pin. So these 2 pins. So first up, and then soldering, it's exactly the same as when we did before. You know, just get the solder on the wire, on the connection, and you need to make sure that you don't cross over to other pins. Just make sure that you're using the 5 volt wire and the ground wire that you did on the power boost. So, now that you've gotten everything all connected, we can put it in the case. So, my case, as you can tell, is 3D printed. I use the local library's 3D printer, and the model I made myself, and I'll go ahead and include that in the description. But before I get going, I would like to say that I made a few errors with the design of the case, and I had to modify it a little bit, just due to the fact that I misjudged some of the sizes of the parts, and also just due to the limitation of the printer that the library had. It just wasn't, the print bed's not very big. It was only a 6" by 6" by 6", and I really needed something a little wider than 6 inches. Just with the size of the screen I have, since it's a 5" screen that only leaves me with 1 inch of room to work with on things on the side, which made plugging things in, well, impossible. So, well, what you can see is what I did is I had to put out 2 little holes for the mounting holes, mounting brackets on the screen. You can see there's 2 mounting brackets. I forgot about those in my model because they felt inconsequential, and they were not. So I had to make those 2 holes for those to slide in, which is, I mean, they look ugly. In the model, if someone wants it, just go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I'll go ahead and make changes to this model so it has the holes already in them. If you are say you only have a 6" by 6" by 6" printer, but I would really just recommend getting a smaller screen. Getting one of the hats for the pies probably would be the better option. Go and look on Adafruit for those. And I also had to cut out, this was due to the limitations of the printer. I'm going to have my plugs for my HDMI port and my power port on the screen just coming out. It's going to look really ugly. I mean, it already doesn't look very good, but it's the only thing I could do. It's just limited by the size. My plans for this project, and maybe I'll do an update video, but I'm going to print another case. My school's computer science program is getting a printer, so I'll go ahead, and it's a bigger one, so I'll go ahead and make a case that's the right size. If I do that, I'll include that as well in the description. But for starters, all I have is this, and I need to get this done, so I'm going to use it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get the battery in, just because it is the biggest, well, it's the heaviest thing, and also it just fits nice and snug in this corner here. So I'm just going to use hot glue and go ahead and just do a few little dabs, one on this corner and then one on the other corner. So I just really need to keep it from jostling around. And it's important the way I have, if you're using my case design, you could always make your own. But the way I have this set up is I have my power boost going to go right here. And so I need this wire on this end. Now I would have liked to put it down here on this corner, but just the way things worked out, I'm not going to be able to do that. Because of the way the case is, it just won't fit. So this is the best I can do here. I'll just have to bend it around and stick it in, but it'll work. And then anyways, we're going to put one dot right here. I don't want to do too much, just a little bit, just to keep it from moving around. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the power boost in here. Now this is going to be pretty tricky since it's soldered to everything. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could get everything in here and solder later, but I wouldn't recommend it as just the way things are. You don't want to melt your case and ruin it that way. So I have a little gouge here for a charging cable. I think I'm going to need to make it bigger on my next case. So again, if you want to do this yourself and want to have my case, go ahead and let me know and I can update it and fix it so it's better. So this right here, the switch slot is absolutely perfect for this switch I have, except I don't know if you remember seeing it previously, but it had little things like kind of arms sticking out right here to help keep it in place. I'm not going to use those. I'm going to use hot glue. But they were getting in the way, so I had to cut them out. Sorry, it's just another thing you didn't see. So again, our good old friend glue gun is going to make sure that this stays nice and secure. Alright, then we're going to go ahead and do another dab on this side. Sorry, everything kind of is sort of messy. I had to get all of my parts together. I just plugged everything in to make sure it was going to fit before I glued it in. But again, just going to glue. Okay, I've switched over to my other case. The front half for now I've got to get the screen in. So since I've got these notches, I'm not going to worry too much about gluing down there. It's pretty snug. I'm just going to have to put some glue here and some glue here. Now I already did this, but you didn't see it. I did it off camera. Make sure before you glue this in that it's going to be centered where you want it to be, like so. Alright, I just gotta wait for this glue to dry. And then what we're going to do next is plug everything in. And then we're going to fold this sandwich together and hope that we can get all of our cables to fit. And there you go. Once you got the top and bottom on, you're ready to go ahead and play some games. Thanks for watching.